Mass Media.
What is your favorite thing in the world?
Comics.
Yes.
Comics!
No, wait, tell me about comics.
Hey everybody, this is Steven Orr. You may know me as the host of shows like Hither Came Conan, Just Another Fanboy, or the Superman Super Show. Well, I'm hosting a new podcast, and I wanted to take this opportunity to tell you all about it. It's a weekly podcast that I'm calling The Comic Book Show because, well, it's a show that's about comic books.
I love comic books.
But rather than reviewing my favorite new releases or focusing on one specific character and all of their various comic book adventures throughout the years, the Comic Book Show will devote full seasons of episodes to one singular miniseries or storyline, one issue per episode. For example, in season 2, you're going to get 8 episodes looking at my absolute most favorite Avengers storyline ever, Under Siege. This was a storyline that ran through 8 issues of the Avengers back in 1986, and it blew my frickin' mind when Baron Zemo and his Masters of Evil attack, infiltrate, and take over the Avengers mansion, torturing poor Jarvis in the process. But before we get there, we're kicking off season 1 with 6 episodes that are all about my most favorite super dude of all time, Superman. And what better storyline to get all up into than the 6-issue miniseries that introduced me to the Big Blue Boy Scout in the first place, The Man of Steel, which was published in 1986 from DC Comics. 1986. I'm sensing a pattern.
No, it's just a coincidence.
Written and drawn by John Byrne, one of the single biggest names in comics at the time, The Man of Steel reboots the entire Superman comic book franchise following the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths the year before. And, well, here, I'll tell you what. Rather than talking about the show, how about I give you a bit from the first episode of season 1, just enough to whet your appetite. Enjoy. We jump forward 18 years. We're now in Smallville, Kansas. Chapter 1 of this issue, and it's called The Secret.
Have you heard about it? This is The Secret.
Clark is playing football. John Byrne has made Clark into a football star, basically a high school football star, which even though this is this is the first origin story of Superman that I ever read. This was my introduction to Superman's origin back in 1986. I feel like, every origin story that has been told since, animation, TV, whatnot, teenage Clark Kent is a very unassuming boy. He has these superpowers, but he's not using them to better himself. He's not using them really to win the football game and stuff like that. So seeing him as a football star that people are throwing up on their shoulders after he wins the game and yelling his name and cheering, and that just feels odd to me. Reading it again now. But Jonathan's on the sidelines and he's watching this, and the coach tells Jonathan that boy of yours is the best. He's going to make millions as a pro. Millions! Jonathan, however, he's not too happy. He doesn't like seeing Clark using his powers to make himself better than others. And he even points out to the coach that there's teammates on the bench that are watching Clark win this game pretty much by himself, and they don't look happy. And when he points that out to the coach is like, they're just jealous, because the coach is just happy that they're winning. He doesn't care how it happens, because football is the most important thing in many Americans' lives, which is, I'm not going to judge. Anyway, Clark is getting ready to go have a soda with Alana Lang after the game, but his dad says, nah, you're coming with me. I'm taking you home. And on the ride home, Clark asks his dad, are you mad at me? And Jonathan tells him, I'm not mad. I'm disappointed. And Clark doesn't understand. He said, well, how can you be disappointed? I just won the last game of the season and I pretty much did it by myself. And Jonathan's like, yeah, I know. And that's what we need to talk about. And then that's when he takes him out to this field, a field that he says that for the last 18 years, he has put the nastiest barbed wire fence he could find around it. He's put up no trespassing signs, and he wants to keep people out of this field. And Clark even mentions, well, this is the field you told me never to play in when I was a little kid. And Jonathan takes him to a spot in the field where there are basically two big doors or basically a big slab of wood in the middle of the field. And he tells Clark to lift it up. He says, with your strength, you're more than strong enough now. You should be able to do it. And so he lifts up this big square piece of wood that's even bigger than your typical garage door. And we find a big hole underneath it, and inside the hole is the rocket. And that's when Jonathan tells Clark that this is where they found him. And Clark's like, found me? You mean I'm adopted?
I'm not adopted. I'm asking Mom.
You know, which is really kind of funny, because imagine you're 18 years old. You're feeling pretty good about yourself. You just won the football game. Everybody loves you. And your dad takes you out into a field where there's a frickin' rocket ship in a crater and says, yeah, this is where we found you. This is where you came from. And you don't think to yourself, oh, hold on, I was in a frickin' rocket ship as a baby? No, his thought is I was adopted. That's what he's dwelling on, which is kind of funny. But Jonathan tells him the story of how 18 years ago they saw something fall out of the sky, and they, in the middle of the night, and they drove out to where they saw it land, and they found the rocket, and inside the rocket is baby Clark. Now, I should point out here, it's very important to note that in John Byrne's retelling of Superman's origin, I talked about how he was in this birthing matrix, this gestation matrix. He was born on Earth rather than on Krypton. In every story that's been told before this point, and frankly, there's origin stories that have been told after this point. Many of them, Kal-El is a baby. Jor-El takes his infant son and places it in a rocket and sends it to Earth. But in this case, he sends his unborn gestating fetus of a son, and it is then born on Earth. And the child happens to be born ultimately when they approach the rocket, and Jonathan puts his hands on the matrix. That's when the matrix opens up, and that is Clark being born into the world. So that was done on purpose, of course. They wanted I don't know if it was what John Byrne wanted or if it was what DC wanted, but ultimately the idea here is that this gives Superman more of a connection with Earth. Yeah, he's from Krypton, he's an alien, but he was born on Earth and raised by a couple of good citizens in the state of Kansas. But one of the funny things about this scene is that while Jonathan does mention that for all they know, this could be a Martian, this little baby could be a Martian, and Martha tells him that he's being ridiculous. Look at this child. It's obviously a human. And so they kind of assume their assumption here at this point, and this is also an important note, their assumption is that this rocket didn't come from outer space. It's maybe Russian, that the Russians sent a baby into space, basically, because Jonathan mentions, they've been sending dogs and monkeys and stuff up there, so I guess. And Martha's just horrified that anybody would send a baby up into space, and that they're going to take this baby home and they're going to raise this child as their own. And if the Russians come looking for them, well, they're going to get Martha's foot in their butt. There you go, folks. That is the kind of fun we're going to get up to in season 1 of the Comic Book Show. Season 1, episode 1 of the Comic Book Show will land on Wednesday, July the 10th, which, by the way, just happens to be the exact date that the first issue of the Man of Steel hit the shelves 38 years earlier.
That's not a coincidence.
Oh, and one last thing. Members of Steeven or Else Beyond will have access to binge all 6 episodes early and ad-free all at once on Wednesday, July the 3rd. If you're not a member of Steeven or Else Beyond and find yourself a little curious, head over to beyond.stevenorelse.com for more information. That link will be in the show notes. So yeah, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to the Comic Book Show now on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I just don't think I can move through life knowing that a guy named Steven did this to me.
Oh, but wait, there's Superman. He'll save us. Superman! Superman! Wait, where are you going? Oh, to hell with him.